Miami Hurricanes are big underdogs against Clemson this weekend, but stranger things have happened in college football this season. So, what's it going to take for the Hurricanes to pull off a minor miracle?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog. Sign up on underdogfantasy.com with the promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Saturday, 3:30 p.m. from Death Valley, your Miami Hurricanes, 19-point underdogs, will try and hand the Clemson Tigers just their second loss on the year. Hurricanes are 5-5, one win away from bowl eligibility. Clemson are 9-1 on the season. Let's bring on our good friend, our boy Blue, Larry Blustein, who does an awesome job covering South Florida high school sports, but college sports, pro sports, and he's on WQAM every single week in Miami. Blue, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much, Alex. Appreciate you having us on.
Oh, listen, the pleasure is all mine, Blue. And okay, so if we're looking matchups wise, Miami against Clemson, I want to start with Miami's offensive line, which unfortunately for everyone has just been decimated by injury this year. And so I look at the situation. I think Lawrence Seymour, who did well last week, is going to have to step up big. Nez Cooper, the true freshman who's been playing really well at right guard, Seymour at left guard. The two of them are really going to have to step up this week against arguably the best defensive line that they're going to face all year, Blue. So is Miami going to be able to keep their quarterback somewhat protected and maybe open up a few running lanes?
Well, thank goodness their quarterback is mobile.
Yes.
So, it's it's kind of tough. I mean, you got a lot of, like you mentioned, Cooper, and then obviously big baby Lawrence Seymour, and guys who are, not used to the big battles yet. And obviously Clemson is loaded up front. They've always been, they seem like they just, grow more claws. You rip one off, they grow another one. And,
They're like the Hydra.
Yeah, exactly. The Dolphins were beneficiary with getting Wilkins back in the day, and so on. But it's going to be a challenge, obviously, for Miami. This is a big step up to, this is by far the best team they'll play all year. Obviously, you look at games against A&M and certainly FSU, who did real well. So the only measuring stick you can make is the fact that Florida State played Clemson pretty tough. You got to understand that Miami's, they're fighting an uphill battle because they're trying to break in new kids without a lot of depth. So it's going to be a challenge for that offensive line because, as you mentioned, defensive front's real good. Their front seven's real good. Linebacking core is very active, makes plays. So Miami's obviously got their work cut out, but no different than any other week this year.
Yeah, I've taken it over the last 24 hours or so, a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the stats and some of the footage on Clemson's recent games. So I think the season-wide stats don't tell the full story because you see a team that season long is really, really tough to run the football against and top rushing defense in the ACC. But for what it's worth, in their last 3 games, they've been kind of pedestrian against the run, against some very good running teams like Florida State and Notre Dame both ran for over 200 yards against Clemson. Louisville ran for 150 team yards against Clemson last week. So their rushing defense stats have taken a little bit of a dip. I think on the Miami side of it, we definitely see some signs that Jaylan Knighton is becoming, the guy that he was last year, which I hope bodes well. But let's talk about the quarterback as well, Blue, because you teased it. Obviously, more than likely, it's going to be Jakari Brown starting again for Miami. There's some good and some bad that comes with that, because obviously a true freshman getting a start in an environment like that, it does make you a little bit nervous. But from a football standpoint, he's shown a lot of poise, has Brown, when he's appeared this year, including last week at Georgia Tech, and his ability to run and fight for yards, not only good for Miami's rushing offense, but also opens things up for the other runners. So how do you see Jakari Brown faring against Clemson, Blue? And also, they don't have a whole lot of tape on him, which could work in Miami's favor.
Yeah, obviously you're right. I mean, it could, but the thing is he had that game last week where he broke in his home state with a bunch of people that he knew in the stands. So to me, even though the crowd wasn't, what it's going to be this weekend, I think the pressure was more on him last week because here he is, the prodigal son returns to the state where he did a tremendous job at Lowndes County and Valdosta, which is southern Georgia, but still. And he had, I think, close to 60, 70 fans, family and friends at the game. And he seemed to come through, with flying colors. I mean, there's a lot to learn. Remember, he's a redshirt freshman. This was his real first
true freshman
right, exactly, of multiple snaps. So, it's going to rattle anybody to go into a place like Death Valley. You know that as well as I do, but I think being an afternoon game kind of tempers it a little bit.
Yeah.
You have those night games where sometimes, and I remember, the worst places to play at night are LSU, Clemson, Gainesville, Tennessee, places like that, because the students have all day to get kind of, crazy for the game. And it's no different here. In Clemson, it's known as a party atmosphere. And usually you get those kids, starting their little partying around, 11 or 12. And by 7 o'clock at night and kickoff, they're more than primed to go. I think this plays, and people don't realize that playing an afternoon game may temper things a little bit. Yeah, the crowd's still going to be boisterous and it's still going to be a pro Clemson crowd, but I think he'll block that out. His first hit, his first reception, and then all of a sudden, let's get down to business. And I think he'll be fine. He's the type of guy, and you could see already that he's going to be a quality quarterback. He's a quality athlete, and one of the more intelligent kids on the team as far as grades. He and Restrepo and Redding have all gotten it done in the classroom as well. So I think, to answer your question, I think he'll be okay. We know Clemson going in is the better team. I mean, there's no hiding that fact. But he's, the one thing he has got to stay away from is mistakes. And I said that to our good friend Vish a couple of weeks ago about the game against Texas A&M when he was out there. And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, they can't make mistakes." And look what happened with Miami. They almost gave the game away in the first couple of minutes against A&M. So they got to stay away from that. And that's, if he makes that mistake, he's just got to, come out, shake it off, and go back right on the horse, because if you don't, that game could get away real quick, real quick. And because they've got the talent, they've got a running game. They can throw the ball a little bit. Their offensive line is real good. They have a kid from South Florida who starts for them as well. So, I think he'll be fine. It's just, I'm more relaxed in the fact that he had his first start already.
I agree. Well, you speak of mistakes, and that's something I want to talk about here on the other side, because actually Clemson's been a little prone to making mistakes as of late, and that's something Miami needs to take advantage of. If they don't force mistakes, they cannot win this football game. That is part of the path to victory. So we're going to talk about that right after we talk about the awesome folks at Underdog Fantasy. Guys, I'm having a blast every single week. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up college football season. It's so easy to get started and easy to play while you're watching your favorite teams play. I've been playing Underdog since, I think it was the 2020 season when I got started. So guys, head to the Underdog website, create your account. You can also use the Underdog mobile app, which is very easy, takes minutes to set it up. And guys, I'm looking this week. We do the pick'em contests in college football, which is so much fun. You simply select 2, 3, or 4 or 5 college football players and predict if they're going to go over or under their stat projections. A couple that I like this week. I like Wisconsin quarterback Graham Mertz higher than 182.5 passing yards against Nebraska. And I'm going to take higher on USC receiver Jordan Addison, higher than 73.5 passing yards against UCLA. So feel free to use my selections in yours. You can fade my selections if you want to. Do whatever you want. There's so many to go through at Underdog Fantasy. Go and make your own picks, guys. It's easy to play, and it's available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any teams, not just your Canes, and decide if they're going to finish higher or lower. It's one of the easiest fantasy to play games out there. And, guys, you can win cold, hard cash in a single game, by the way. Sign up with our promo code, Locked On. That's all one word, Locked On. And Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. If you deposit $100, they give you an extra $100 free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or the Google Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Someone, Blue, who's been excelling in Miami's defense and was officially anointed as a starter. That's Wesley Bissainthe at linebacker. Now, he did start last week, and Mario was asked about it. Like, was that like kind of a one-time thing? How are his reps going to play out? No, he is now a starting linebacker at the University of Miami, Mario says. And Blue, it's well-deserved because, Miami's got some linebackers that, have some athletic limitations. Bissainthe doesn't. He looks like a Miami linebacker. You watch the way he pursues, how fast he is, how hard he hits, how smart he is. That looks like a Miami linebacker. Now, I'm sure out of everyone who's watched this young man, you've watched him more than most, so you're probably not very surprised to see Mr. Bissainthe excelling the way that he is.
Well, there's a reason, Alex, that 20 minutes after Mario Cristobal's initial press conference, he was standing at Miami Central because he knew, even though he was all the way across country, he knew how valuable a player like this could be. I mean, he had a kid in Justin Flo, so he understands how good a marquee linebacker could be for your team. And he's exactly, you take a look at the roster, and obviously there's a lot of players that Mario Cristobal and his staff would not have recruited. Now, that's a given because anytime you come into a situation, there's a reason why you're there. There's a reason why you're the new coach at a place. And he's definitely one of the kids that would be recruited and probably one of the high priorities. Watching him in high school, he was a man child, often drew double team from the opposition, taking on blocks, and just a very intelligent kid. And that's the one thing. And that's the one, I think, if you look at any of the teams that Mario Cristobal has coached, even going back to the Rutgers and the FIU days, you always had smart kids, and the guys who were intelligent. And, that's no mistake because if you remember Jimmy Johnson's philosophy back in the day, when somebody asked him, what's the secret? He goes, well, when we were with the Cowboys, my first 4 picks one year, they were all academic All-Americans.
Oh, yeah.
And you think about that, and you look at Wesley. Wesley's a very, not only high football IQ, but just high IQ in general. So, yeah, no surprise, game player, practice player, because remember, in this regime, practice is everything. And that's why when you see a lot of these players who aren't playing in games, no matter what the parents may say, they're not at the practices. And he emphasizes you practice how you play. And people might think that's a trite statement, but that's a motto that he lives by. And somebody like a Wesley Bissainthe gave it up in practice to the point where they were so impressed. And that's how you win jobs. And that's how you maintain your job. And yeah, Wesley's a different level guy. And that's what you do. You bring in the Francis Mauigoas, you bring guys like in that. And then a couple of years, you're going to say, well, you know what? We've got studs everywhere. And that's what's going to happen.
So I look at Miami's defense against Clemson's offense, and obviously the player who scares us most is Will Shipley. That's you got to try and keep him contained. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Now, DJ Uyunglele doesn't scare me too much. He's obviously big and he's capable of making plays, but he's
Right.
just been very Jekyll and Hyde. And something that Clemson has been prone to in recent games, Blue, is coughing the football up. They've got 9 turnovers committed over their past 3 games. Now, again, you can't really compare Georgia Tech to Clemson as an opponent. I'm not trying to do that, but Hurricanes do come off a 4 takeaway performance, right? 3 of those by Cam Kinchins, who's an absolute stud. Tyreek Stevenson had an interception. Miami's going to have to do something like that, Blue. I think you're going to need to win that turnover margin +2, +3, or even +4 to win this game. Do you think Miami can do something like that this week?
Well, I'm sure they could, whether they do or not. I mean, it's going to have to, these kids are going to have to play hard. They're going to have to hit hard. They're going to have to anticipate. They're going to have to understand that, as you mentioned, Will Shipley's as good as any back you're going to face. I mean, he's quick. He gets to the outside. He's tough to bring down. And I remember him coming out of high school, and a lot of people are saying, this kid may be a one-trick pony. But he catches the ball too. You see, that's the thing that'll get you. So you're going to have to, come up with big plays. And I've seen him, I think it was in the Notre Dame game. I mean, he coughed up the ball twice. Yeah. Once in a crucial situation. The other one was, I think it was like on a 3rd and long. And they were back in their own territory, which, kind of hurt them a little bit. But yeah, no, they've got to make plays and they've got to force these fumbles. They can do it, but they've got to be able to. And as you mentioned with Cam Kinchins, that gives you another dimension of somebody who's kind of knows the landscape in the secondary. So you never know what happens, but you got to play pressure on the quarterback, and you got to limit the run game. You're not stopping it. I don't care what anybody thinks. You're not stopping the run game, but you're going to limit it, right. And you have to kind of like those chunk yards, you got to keep away from those 30, 40 yard gains. You got to keep them to, those minimal gains. If he averages 4.2 yards a carry for a while, then you're going to have to stop him sooner or later.
Blue, I'm thinking about players who could be X factor different makers for Miami this week. Obviously coming off the game he just had, I'm looking at Jaylan Knighton, the Rooster, who you talk about reports about certain guys or certain guy walking out of a practice and certain parents complaining about playing time. I wish they could all be like the Rooster, because honestly, I love the way that, he was down. He was down the depth chart, was facing adversity, had that fumbling problem. Instead of taking his ball and going home, he keeps showing up, working hard in practice. His opportunities came back. He's been thriving the last couple games. So, of course, he's going to be an X factor, I hope, this week. Somebody I neglected to mention in one of my recent shows, and a couple of listeners were like, well, Donno, you should have mentioned this guy. What kind of an impact do you think Frank Ladson can have on this game, Blue? Because if there's ever a week to be motivated, right, he's going up against his former teammates there. And also, he I'm sure, and Cristobal talked about this a little bit, he can share some intel because he knows these Clemson players, better than anybody on Miami's staff does.
Yeah, well, he can share all the intel he wants, but if you can't stop the play, it's sort of the one thing is like you're tipping a kid off, tipping the fastball off to a batter, but if he can't hit the fastball, he's not going to hit it. Right. But I think he's going to be very helpful to them. And obviously the return of Don Chaney too is going to kind of help a little bit. I think he's going to get a few carries. They're going to kind of limit him. Obviously, this is his first action in a long time, but he's, from what I understand, at practice and they win a few lives, he's got the goods and he's ready to go. And
I hear he's looked so good that he may have inspired people to walk out of practice. That's how good he's looked.
Well, that's life. Competition makes the world go round and it makes you better. And if you're not ready for, and especially again with this regime, every Monday Mario Cristobal and his staff open the depth chart up. So you gotta earn your depth chart ranking, and that's It's the only way to do it. I mean, it comes right out of the Jimmy Johnson school, the Butch Davis school of coaching, where nothing is given to you, and you have to earn everything. And I think that's what will make Miami a better team. The competition, the understanding that no position is won. You have to earn it.
Larry Blustein is with us here. He does an awesome job, AM 560 Sports WQAM. He's been covering South Florida high school sports at a high level for a really, really, really long time. When we come back, I want to take a look at some of the odds. I want to put Blue on the hot seat for a game pick. I'm going to make a game pick as well, so I'm not just going to throw Blue under the bus. I'm going to give you a game pick for this one as well. And I want to talk a little recruiting with Blue because he's so dialed in. There's a certain South Florida-based running back who recently decommitted from Ohio State. We are all wondering what he is going to do next. So we will talk about that and more after we talk about Nugenix. Oh, my goodness, guys. I'm getting older. I'm pushing 40. I've been fighting off the dad bod. And one of the reasons why I've actually been winning that fight against the dad bod is because of Nugenix. You want to feel more like your old self again. You were thinking, oh, I don't have time to work out, but I wanted the energy and the body that I once had. Then you discovered Nugenix and you will feel fully revived and you'll work out like you used to, guys. If you're feeling like you just can't get in shape, it's not your fault, because as men age, our body naturally loses free testosterone. That's the man hormone. Happens to every man and can make it more difficult to stay in shape and stay energetic. Do you remember when winning used to feel easy? That's because when you're younger, you were at the peak of your testosterone production. Let's get that swagger back, guys. If you want more energy to counter the negative physical effects of aging, Nugenix Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym, and help you look and feel more like the man you want to be. Nugenix Total T contains man-boosting key ingredients like Testofen. It has been validated in 5 clinical studies shown to boost free testosterone levels in men. While every product professes quality, many other products use generic ingredients that are often far less clinical grade. With Nugenix Total T, you get the same clinical potency levels used in the trials, and Nugenix formulation is backed by 10 years of science and research. Nugenix Total T can help re-energize your life and help get you back to being the powerful, confident, good-looking warrior that you used to be. Now, you can get a complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T when you text college to 231231. Text now and get a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text college to 231231. Text college to 231231. Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply. Get a complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T when you text college to 231231. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Blue, a couple nights ago, Mark Fletcher, which I don't know, people have been suspecting this for months that he could decommit from Ohio State. So that wasn't that surprising to me, the 4-star running back out of American Heritage, that he decommitted from OSU. The thing that's a little bit frustrating from my standpoint as a Miami Hurricanes guy is I know that Mario and staff have been putting in the work on this guy constantly. He's even said it, like, they don't stop recruiting me, like they are relentless. And then on the day that he decommits, the Florida Gators are considered the strong favorites because he just had a visit there and then he decommits about a day and a half after his visit to Florida. So most of the signs seem to be pointing to the Gators. What do you think happens there, Blue, with Mark Fletcher? Because Miami need a running back really badly in this class. Can Miami turn it around, or is it Florida's battle to lose?
Well, I think they can. And the one thing is where Miami has no definitive guy that's their number one. Parrish ran really well. As you mentioned, Rooster ran pretty well. Florida's got Etienne, the young kid, speaking about Clemson, his younger brother who starts for Florida. And Florida's got kids like Naquan Wright on the bench, who is the type of guy. Naquan Wright is the next Duke Johnson. He'll catch 70 balls out of the backfield in the NFL. They've got 2 or 3 guys that are still waiting. Remember another kid, the Bowman kid, who transferred out of there and went to UCF after being at Clemson and being everywhere. Florida is a place, a destination now, because everybody sees the future and everybody sees what Coach Napier has done. But that being said, you hate to bring this in, but it's part of the landscape of college football, Alex, that the NILs. And
yeah, for sure.
And I think that, you look at Jaden Rashada, and what happened with him became a battle of NIL money. And that's why I told you before, the transfer portal this year will be more active than it's ever been, because of the fact that the NIL, these kids who are sophomores and or juniors in college are looking at the situation and say, wait a minute, these freshmen have never done a thing and they're getting X amount of dollars. We need to get our chunk of it as well. So that's what's going to happen. And I'm pretty sure that's what's happening in this deal, because of the fact that now it's become such a, even with the accusations with Jimbo Fisher and Coach Saban, Nick Saban, about, that's how you're building your roster. Well, that's how everybody's building their roster now, because it's legal to do it. I think if he ends up with Miami, because of the fact that he's got early playing time, he could jump right in the mix. He'll be that short yardage back, in close. He'll be that power back. He's a downhill runner. He's a Big Ten kid. Mm-hmm. So, obviously Miami's going to change their philosophy a little bit. I don't know if Thad Franklin's even in the mix anymore. I mean,
probably not. Who knows? But, I don't know for sure, but probably not.
So that's another reason too. You still got the kid that did extremely well. I can't think of his name. The kid got hurt, freshman kid. Came in. Citizen. So if you and we found out that you could have 4 or 5 backs, and it still might not be enough. Yeah. Because if you remember when Rooster and Parrish and were hurt and they needed somebody to step up, they didn't have enough backs. So there's a lot of selling in that. Definitely an asset if he comes, but I can understand if he doesn't. It's just because he has to look out for what he's, his best interest.
Well, let's take a look for my best interest when it comes in potentially wagering on games this weekend. Let's take a look at some of the numbers here, courtesy of Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered. Get it? This season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, Blue, we're looking at Miami and Clemson. At a time earlier this week, Clemson were favored by 19.5. That number has shrunk ever so slightly. The Hurricanes are now plus 19 underdogs in this one. Listen, I got to tell you, I don't feel strongly about this particular number to bet Miami plus 19, nor Clemson minus 19 because it's a big number. But I am predicting a 31-17 Clemson victory. So I think Miami's going to keep it within that. I think we're going to see Miami play relatively mistake-free football, and Jakari Brown's going to make enough plays to keep it close. I think the Tigers will probably pull away late. If Miami can keep it close for 3 quarters, I would be somewhat satisfied with that, given how bad they've looked at some points this season. So I think Clemson's going to win the game, but maybe not cover that spread. What do you think? Do you have a prediction?
Well, I thought, coming into the game, a couple of weeks ago, I probably thought a little bit differently after the Florida State game.
Oh, yeah.
But now I said 43-20. That was my initial, gut reaction to a game like this, where they're going to be able to score. They're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to do things. They're at home. Miami may get a few mop-up, a score at the end. I think I go in thinking that probably will be more likely the score. It could be a little bit closer, obviously. But if Miami starts turning the ball over, I think 43-20 is kind of generous, especially what this team is capable of doing, and you lose. And you got to, even though people say, well, you can't compare this game, but you lose 42 points to your bitter rival at home, and you're going on the road against a team that's notoriously beat your butt.
Yeah,
So,
and a team that beat the rival that beat you
yes,
45
exactly.
to 3 at home. Yeah,
Exactly. But if you go by that thinking like that, Duke beat Georgia Tech and Miami handled Georgia Tech.
that's
So,
a good point.
you know,
It's a very good point.
So
And also,
ways to go to it.
and Georgia Tech beat Pitt, so Miami should be in good shape next week then.
Exactly, if you go by that. So, but I'll leave it at that. I mean, you and I have been through this enough that, you say, well, Miami's going to do this and that. Then you become realistic because now you're at the realistic point because you know that it's not going to stay like this. You know that it's going to be elevated every single game, every single year. And next year when we are talking, and, because I don't think they'll play Clemson for a while now because they're not in that little group. But the thing is next year with the Texas A&M and a pretty good program, Florida State on the road, I think they're going to improve. And that's all you could ask for. And, 2 years ago when Mike Norvell took over FSU, all you kept hearing is he's not the answer. He's not the answer. He's gone. So, right. But I do believe that Mario Cristobal and this staff are the answer, no matter what parents or anybody says, because, and I'm not trying to be brash, but I kind of have more insight than a lot of those parents and a lot of those people there. And I know definitely what's going on. And you could see by just being at the press conferences that this is killing him because he's a winning guy. He's got a pride. He's got a lot of ego in him, a prideful ego. And he doesn't want to stand for this. And that's why you're going to see all these changes. But I think, I think we know where they're at. And if they make a bowl, it's fine. If they don't, then, you utilize next year and use it as motivation. That's all.
So, by the way, for everyone wondering, courtesy of Bet Online, the over/under for this game is 48. If you go by my predicted final score, it's a push, and I didn't do that on purpose. But if you go by Blue's predicted final score, you think about the over, right?
Oh, the over, okay,
yeah. You think about the over for Blue. One more I wanted to ask you about quick because I'm looking at these numbers on Bet Online. So another ACC matchup, Blue. Pittsburgh at home against Duke. Is Pittsburgh really 7.5 points better than the Duke Blue Devils? I'm not going to say the wrong team's favored because Pitt probably wins that game. I mean, Abanikanda is just such a special back. But I would have thought, honestly, Duke at Pittsburgh, I thought maybe that's like a 3.5 type of spread game. 7.5 in Pitt's favor seems like a big spread.
Well, you're getting a home 7. That's what it is. You usually get that touchdown at home. And I mean, it's not out of the realm. They've played real well, at times, but then they've played ugly at other times. But this illustrates the ACC. The ACC, with the exception maybe one or two teams, you don't know what's going to happen from week to week. You don't, because there's so many teams, even teams like Boston College, who, they'll give you a run, or Virginia Tech, just when you don't think that they will. So, I understand what you're saying. I would just side on Pittsburgh with the points or given the points because of the fact that anything could happen. And they're not looking. Yeah. They're not looking ahead to Miami. Miami's looking ahead to them.
Which may not be a good thing for Miami, but yeah. So, guys, those numbers are brought to you by Bet Online. They have you covered with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. Larry Blustein, can't thank you enough for your time.
Anytime.
Even though you're picking Clemson, and actually I am as well. So if you guys want to be mad at Blue, you can be mad at me as well. Anything you want to promote, Blue? Because I was lucky enough to be a guest on your show this week, which was awesome. When's your next show? Because I know you sometimes get moved around for the sports schedules. When can we next hear the South Florida High School Sports Show?
Well, we're back in the Eastern time zone this week. We're instead of going 9:30 to 11:30, which was kind of a stretch, but we're back at 8 to 10. Following Hurricane Hotline, and then the following week we're 6 to 8. And we got to, we're on whenever the Panthers, the University of Miami basketball, or the Miami Heat we have to kind of dance around them, which is fine. I mean, it's a really good show, and I enjoy doing it. And we have really, really good guests, and we've had them throughout the entire season. Right now we are playoff oriented, so we have a lot of kids and a lot of coaches. But then when we get into January, February, and March, we start with our college coach segment, and we'll have a head coach from all over. Mario was on last year. We had basically everybody in the ACC on. So it's a fun listen. And, our podcasts off of that are really successful because people may not be able to, tune in from 8 to 10 or 6 to 8, but they could always follow it up and go and listen to all the podcasts, the individual ones or the entire show.
I love it. So make sure you check him out, and on Twitter at Larry Blustein. And guys, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. That's your second listen after you make Locked On Canes. Your first listen, of course, from the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow before the Clemson game right here on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.